Hello, welcome back. It's time to add a controller for user registration and login. We're going to make use of two classes of the identity framework, the user manager and the sign-in manager. And I'm going to show you how you can access these classes using dependency injection. So a few videos ago in the startup class, we added the services of entity framework and identity, and this will enable us to do something I'm going to show you now. So in the controllers folder, we are going to add a new controller, add new item. And let's see, there it is, MVC controller class, and we're going to call it account controller. And there it is. Now to make use of the identity framework, we can actually change the constructor, but there's no constructor yet, so let's add it. The constructor is simply the method with the same name as the class, so public account controller. And then in the parameters we can request a user manager. Let's resolve the namespace. Yep. And then we have to specify the type, as always, which will be application user, and let's resolve that as well. And let's call the object user manager. And then we also need the sign-in manager to be able to sign in users. So the second one is sign-in manager of type application user. And let's call that one sign-in manager. Okay, now it's time to assign these to private variables in our class. So I'm going to add a private user manager application user, and let's call that one underscore user manager, and then the sign-in manager. And when we then assign the two parameters to the private variables, so like this, dependency injection will actually take care of assigning these variables automatically. So this will all work just fine. I don't actually need to create any objects myself. So let's add our registration method. We're going to add two methods. One is for just showing the registration form. So it's going to be an HTTP GET variant. We'll call it register, and it's going to return an iAction result, which is basically a view. So we can just say here return view. And then when we create a view later, it will just display it here. So when the user clicks the register button on this view, we're going to run the HTTP post variant. And this one will be an asynchronous method. So it will be public async and return a task of type iAction result. Now this might look a bit weird, but we'll actually need it to be able to make use of our user manager. So let's call it register as well, and it will have a parameter of register view model that we created earlier. Let's just call it model, and this will contain all the data that has been filled into this form. So first thing we have to do is check if this model is actually valid, and we can do that simply by checking if model state is valid. It's always important to check both client side and server side. So let's create our user object, which we will then try to insert into the database. So it's an application user. Let's call him user. So we can immediately assign the values in here, and we only need to assign two: the username, which will be model.email, and the email, which will also be model.email, because the username and email are the same in our project. Then we can try to insert them into the database by using the user manager. So this will return an identity result. And because it's an asynchronous method, we're calling it using await. So it will wait for the method to finish before continuing with the rest of the code. There is no synchronous method to create a user, by the way. If there were, the code would be cleaner, but there isn't. So let's add user, and then we also have to specify the password as the second parameter, which is just model.password. So this will try to add the user, and then we can check if the operation was successful by checking the result. If result is succeeded, then, well, what shall we do? I think we can immediately sign in the user with the sign in manager. So again, this is asynchronous. So await sign in manager dot sign in async. And then we can specify the user, but we already have it, it's user. And there are some other parameters, like the bool is persistent. So will we keep him logged in after he closes the website? And we're not going to do that right now. So this will just be false. And that's it. So if the user has been added, we will sign him in. Return redirect to action. And we're going to pick the third variant with the action name and the controller name. And the action name will be index, as a string of course, and the controller name will be home. Okay, so if this went wrong, then it would be nice to show the user what went wrong. We can add errors to our model state, which will be shown in the view that we will return after this. So our model state object actually has an add model error method that we can use to add our own errors. Let's just put that in a for each loop. I'm not sure what the type of the error is, but let's just use var error, not error in result.errors. And then let's just add each error to the model state. I think we can leave the key empty. And the value will be error.description. So this way, when we return the register view, which is just the register form that we also return here, it will add the error that went wrong when adding the user to the database. So he will actually know what happened. We can do this by simply typing return view. So to summarize, if the user actually submits a form, then we will go here to the HTTP post variant. If the form has valid input, then we will go into the if statement, try to add a user to the database using the user manager. If this was successful, we will sign him in and redirect to the home page. If it wasn't successful, we will add the errors to our model state and return the register form again. I think that's it for the registration. Then we also need a login form. So let's add our login method. So first the HTTP GET variant, which is just a login form. And it will just return the view. And then the post variant. Which will again be a task by action result as it will be executed asynchronously. And the parameter will be the login view model we created earlier. Again, we check if the model state is valid. And if it isn't, then we will just return the view again. So the user will be directed back to the login page. If it is valid, then we will try to sign in the user. Our result is, and again we have to await the asynchronous method of the sign-in manager, which is called password sign-in async. And the second variant of this works with the username and password. So the username is model.email and the password is model.password. False, false for the other parameters. And then if this was successful, we will redirect the user to the home page. And if it wasn't, we will just add an error to our model state. Model state.add model error. No key. And just invalid login attempt will do fine. And that's it for our login form. Now the last thing we need to do is to be able to actually check if this works. So I'm going to add another method which will just return a string and call it check. And it will return yes, you are logged in. If you are logged in. Now how can we check if a user is logged in? We can simply guard the method against anonymous access by specifying authorize, and then we have to resolve this yes like this. And now this method cannot be accessed by anonymous users, so you have to log in to be able to get here. So that's it for our controller. We've added user registration, a login and a check if the user is logged in. So in the next part I'm going to add the two views for registration and logging in.